Hello humans, it's just Martine, and I'm gonna read these classics this year. Here I have 4 pretty chunky classics that I want to get through. It's Jane Eyre, Anna Karenina, which I started like yesterday, Atlas Shrugged, and The Three Musketeers. This one was actually picked by Michaela out of my classics, so thanks for nothing, Michaela. And since all of these are pretty big books, it's really gonna take me all year, which is why I started Anna Karenina. It's January, mid-January now, and I'm just gonna make a little progress on one of these, hopefully pretty much every day until we get through them. Good joke. These are, for the most part, classics that I'm really looking forward to. I've wanted to read Jane Eyre for a really long time. I've read Wuthering Heights by the other Bronte sister, and I gave that one 5 stars. That was years ago, so I really want to try Jane Eyre. I know I hated War and Peace, but I'm still drawn to Anna Karenina, and I figured the part that I liked the least about War and Peace was the war, and this doesn't have that, so that's on that. I read a novella by this author for one of my previous secret TBRs that was about female sci-fi authors on Project Gutenberg. Loved the writing, I think I gave it a 4 stars, so I've wanted to read Atlas Shrugged ever since, in spite of this. And then The Three Musketeers, I picked up this fancy copy one time when I was in Tampa for a convention at Oxford Book Exchange, one of my favorite bookstores of all time. It's so beautiful. Every time I go there, I get a nice classic, so this was my pick one year, and now I guess I'm going to read it. Big day today. I started this book on January 15th, and it's now April 8th, but I finished Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. And my track record with Tolstoy is not good. So reading it in 3-ish months is actually incredible for me, because War and Peace took me more than 4 times that amount of time. It took me over a year to read War and Peace, but I liked this one a lot better, and I also had a physical copy, which I think really helped, because I think something that stood in my way with War and Peace was like, I was reading the ebook. I was reading it on my phone, an ebook on my phone, and I felt like I had to read like over 100 pages to get to 1%, and because on Bookly I was tracking it by percentages, I felt like it wouldn't feel like I'd actually accomplished anything for reading War and Peace for the day if I read less than 1%. But with the physical copy, thanks to my school library, I could read a singular page, and that would move the meter, and that felt better. I'm giving it 3.5 stars, so I liked it a lot better than War and Peace. There were still some sections that dragged or that I felt were unnecessary. I didn't get all of the things that Tolstoy was trying to do with this, but on the whole, I found it a lot more interesting. We're mainly following 2 women. One is Kitty, and she is between 2 suitors right now, and she has to make a decision. And then we're following Anna Karenina, obviously, who is already married and comes and meets Kitty and accidentally steals Kitty's man. Things ensue from there because it's old Russian society. Divorce is not like a great thing there, so it just gets messy really quickly, and it ends messy too, you know? So I appreciated that. I liked that this was more of the peace parts of War and Peace, because when I read War and Peace, I was like, the peace parts were pretty interesting, the war was not. And this had significantly less war. In fact, I think they only talked about war for like 1 scene. Other than that, there were a couple boring things, like there was an election that I didn't understand how it was pertinent to the plot and things like that. But on the whole, we got a lot more of what I liked about War and Peace than what I didn't. We also had a much smaller cast of characters, another thing that I hated in War and Peace. I'm happy that I gave this one a shot. I had to like it better than War and Peace. Multiple people told me I would, so I gave it a go, and I'm glad I did, and now I can work on conquering the other 3 classics that I need to conquer this year, and hope they go like a little faster than this one did. But yay. Let's talk about Jane Eyre. I literally almost sat down and said, let's talk about Anna Karenina, because I was thinking about Anna Karenina when I was brainstorming just now, like a second ago, what I was going to say to you. So that was my bad. But yeah, today I finally finished Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, and I'm giving it 4 stars. This means that half of these classics have been conquered, which feels good because it's more than halfway through the year. It's late July now, so there's that. Jane Eyre is the story of this girl named Jane Eyre. I hope I actually put in the effort to put like a cheering sound effect there. You're so welcome. Jane is like orphaned at a pretty young age and eventually sent to boarding school, and then her life kind of continues on from there. I will say the chunk in the middle felt like a totally different book than the chunks on either side. Although it did tie together at the end, but it still felt like I was reading a completely different book in the middle. And I have to say, the book in the middle, I liked more. But overall, I found all the characters in this to be very interesting, including Jane herself. She's a very powerful female character, which from the time this was written is particularly interesting. And then the whole story with Mr. Rochester is pretty interesting. It was the plot where this like lost a star. I really enjoyed the writing. Didn't feel bad like sitting with this for a while. Like sometimes when I'm reading a slow book, I just want it to be faster. And in this one, I really didn't care. So that's a good sign to me. Like I was happy sitting with it for a while, which was good. And it also helps that I started reading this for 30 minutes every day at one point. This is a weird and wonderful book, and I'm glad to say that I've finally read it because now I've read something from both the Bronte sisters. So yay. I still love Wuthering Heights more. Granted, I read Wuthering Heights years ago, and it might not live up to my own hype in my head if I reread it now. But I won't find out anytime soon because my sister has been in the middle of it for years now. Not as in 4 years, but like 4 years. Although it might have been 4 years, I'll be honest with you. It might be 4 years or more. So it will likely take me a while to see that book again, but when I do, I think I'll still like it better than this one. Just because I think that one felt more cohesive. Sorry, Charlotte. Another classic conquered. Now just the longest ones to go. I finished this book. So a couple things. One, this mass market paperback does not hold up well. I got it used and it was already cracking, but I had to resort to duct taping it together because at one point it ripped and I thought it was just going to be 2 chunks of a book. So I had to save it. But I took the last 2 weeks and devoted the majority of my reading time to reading this book, and I'm giving it 4 stars, which I feel a little weird about because there are things that this book says that I do not agree with. This book makes some interesting and or good points and has a very interesting way of doing that, but at the end of the day, this is just not how I see the world. But I honestly think that made it a more interesting read than if this is how I did see the world, because I got to see the ways in which the author constructed her argument and the ways in which she sees the world. And that's one of the reasons I like reading, is so that I can understand how other people think, especially people who have different experiences than I do or different thoughts than I do. So for that reason, I found it really intriguing. And there was only one section of the book that I got really annoyed reading. It was the like 3-hour-long monologue from one of the characters that was like 70 pages long in reading. That was tedious and not interesting. But the rest of it, I generally found interesting, except whenever a character monologued, but none of the monologues were nearly as long as that one. In this one, we're following this character, Dagny Taggart, and her family owns a transcontinental railroad, and she kind of runs it even though her brother gets all like the glory for it. And suddenly some things start happening in the government that are like messing things up. It's really, at the end of the day, this story about the idea of socialism versus capitalism. I think the author wrote this in such an outrageous way, thinking that it would prove her point. But to be honest, I don't think it did prove her point because it was in such an outrageous way. I don't know if that makes any sense. But overall, I did find this an interesting read. I found the motivations of some characters to be interesting. I found their thoughts to be interesting. Some alarming, but interesting nevertheless. I do think being shown other people's perspectives, like this showed me some other perspectives, is one of the main reasons I read, and so I can't fault it for that. And it held my attention, and for a book this big, the fact that only at the end did I get really tired of reading it is a miracle and a good sign towards the book, I think. This will not be for everyone. Yeah, that's just it. This won't be for everyone, but I'm glad I gave it a shot. I do like this author's writing, so that helped going in knowing that. I was curious to see what it was all about, and you know, I had a pretty good reading experience. And this was the longest book on this TBR, which is a relief that it's over now. Honestly, I felt like I was hiking Mount Everest reading this book, but it's over now. Go me. Hello, I'm here to update you because yesterday I finally finished reading The Three Musketeers. I actually read it in like a week, but getting around to reading it took me forever. So here we are, and exciting news, I'm giving it 4 stars. I really enjoyed this book. I say that surprisingly because like, although I wanted to like it, I wasn't sure that I would. I mean, it's huge, it's adventure-y, not things that are necessarily a recipe for a success in a classic for me, but I really, really liked this. It was funny and fun, like a good time. It's about this dude. His name's D'Artagnan, and he comes from his little town with a letter from his dad to the like captain of the Musketeers, who are like a special guard force for the king. And he's like, look, this is my son, let him in. But he accidentally loses the letter in a duel situation because he is a hothead. Like, people are not laughing at him and he thinks they're laughing at him, which is fair and fine, but he challenges them to a duel over it. That's crazy. And so he goes and meets this guy, and the guy's like, well, I can't just let you into the Musketeers, you know, like that's not exactly how this works, but you can be in like this other guard thing and you can work your way up. But in the meantime, he becomes friends with 3 Musketeers, Aramis, Athos, and Porthos, and they just go on some crazy adventures together. Like, they make some bad decisions, they do some silly and stupid things, and just have a good time. And it's like a really fun old adventure-y book, and unlike other huge classics, not overly descriptive. Like, there are so many times that the narrator says, okay, so next this like battle thing happened, but it's not relevant to the plot, so we're just going to say they succeeded. And I loved that, because in contrast to some other big classics like Les Mis, there's a battle that's not relevant to the plot and they describe it in 100 pages. So I really liked this one. It was like 600 pages of stuff that actually happened instead of 600 pages of descriptions of something small that I didn't care about. So yay for the 3 Musketeers. And with the end of the 3 Musketeers comes the end of this vlog. I did it. I really thought for a while there that I wasn't actually going to make it with this one. Really thought that, but I did it. I conquered these classics. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up and comment down below, have you read any of these classics and which classics should I conquer next? And subscribe for more reading, writing, and college lifestyle content. And until next time, bye humans, bye!